I was with this rich alpha, Jackson, for 4 years. Then I got pregnant by accident. In the middle of my pregnancy, his fiancée slapped me so hard I went deaf in my right ear. Jackson said, "I told you not to run around. Why don't you ever listen?" That's when I knew I was a secret he had to keep hidden. After the baby was born, they forcibly removed my scent gland. Heartbroken, I ran away in disgrace. I didn't take anything with me, not even my child. I was handed over to Jackson as collateral for a debt. My family fell apart after I presented as a prime omega. My recessive alpha father accused my recessive omega mother of cheating. He'd point at my nose and say I wasn't his real son. Even when my mom, hurt, said we could get a paternity test, he refused to listen. He spent his days drinking, whoring, and gambling, all while spreading rumors that my mom was a terrible woman. When he won, he was happy and drank to celebrate. He'd come home drunk and beat my mom. When he lost, he was miserable and drank to forget. He'd come home drunk and beat my mom. I tried to protect her once, taking the blows with her. She just pushed me away resentfully. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't presented as a prime, I wouldn't be suffering like this. Everyone in this family is recessive. What makes you the exception?" I didn't understand. Wasn't presenting as a prime a good thing? Why was I the first one my own family rejected? No one ever explained it to me. When I was 18, my mom really did run off with someone else. That left me as my dad's only punching bag. He owed a lot of money to loan sharks. The collectors were camped at our door every other day. 3 days before the SATs, I went home. My dad shoved me towards a group of tattooed debt collectors, fawning over them. "Hey guys, this kid's a prime omega. His pheromones are elong, super seductive. Why don't you guys have some fun with him? Maybe you can knock a little off my debt?" The collectors were mostly recessive alphas. They flared their nostrils, sniffing all around me, their faces twisted into disgusting, obsessed expressions. I couldn't fully control my pheromones yet, and I tried desperately to escape. But I couldn't move. The pheromones from any alpha could drain my strength. The most humiliating part was that the first person to stop me from running was my own father. He unleashed the full force of his dominance and parental authority on me, roaring with rage. "I raised you all these years. Isn't it time you paid me back? You think you can run? Omegas are all sluts. So what if you're a prime? I can still make your legs go weak." Then he turned back to the collectors, smiling obsequiously. "I hear prime omegas have a really high chance of getting pregnant, and an even higher chance of having a prime alpha. Do whatever you want with him. It's fine if he gets pregnant. Just please, go easy on my debt, and please don't hit me." The collectors' eyes lit up as they stared at me, ready to pounce. They swarmed me, their hands tearing at my clothes, arguing over who would get to go first. The chaotic mix of pheromones assaulted my senses. It was nauseating. My vision blurred. My ears rang. All I could think was that I'd rather be dead. A jacket smelling of crisp lime gin was thrown over me, making my eyes flicker. Jackson was standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the light. His expression was cold, his lips were moving. My ears were still ringing, so I couldn't hear what he was saying. All I knew was that the collectors were trembling, backing away behind him. My dad tried to run but was caught. They pinned him to the ground and chopped off 2 fingers from his right hand. But it wasn't enough. Even his life wasn't enough to cover his debts. And so Jackson took me away. Jackson was the boss of those debt collectors. But he was only 4 years older than me. His family had a background in organized crime. He'd been thrown into the real world to learn the ropes early on. His first assignment was managing a casino. My dad was just one of his many deadbeat clients. Normally, it wouldn't have been worth his time to show up in person. But he was bored and had been waiting outside for his guys to handle things. He came in to check on the situation. And just like that, he picked me up, this unwanted burden. That night, he threw me on the bed. He gave me 2 choices. "You're here to pay off a debt. You can serve me or you can serve all of them. Your choice." Trembling, I undid his belt. I told him it was my first time. I begged him to be gentle. After it was over, Moonlight filtered through the dark curtains. I stared at that sliver of light and dared to ask him, "Can I still go to school?" Jackson, satisfied, wrapped an arm around my waist and patted my head. He was half asleep. "Sure. You're not a prisoner. I don't have to lock you up." That night, I suddenly felt like life might not be so hard after all. But I never made it to college. When I took the SATs, there were so many questions I couldn't answer. My brain felt like mush. I recognized the words, but I couldn't understand them. I had become so stupid. But that wasn't right. Prime omegas, just like prime alphas, are naturally intelligent with high IQs. I used to be a top student just to stay in high school. Now, I was too dumb to get into any university. When Jackson saw my SAT scores, he just smiled and tried to comfort me. "It's okay to be a little dumb. You're with me now. I'll take care of you." And I was with him for 3 years. I was good, quiet. I never caused any trouble. And I was the only omega Jackson had. In the 4th year, I got pregnant by accident. I was already 4 months along when I found out. I was terrified. Jackson always used protection. I was scared he'd think I was messing around, that he'd yell at me, hit me, like my dad. I wanted to get an abortion in secret. The doctor advised against it, saying it would be very damaging to my body. I didn't care. As I lay on the operating table, I was still trying to figure out how to keep it from Jackson. The next second, Jackson appeared in front of me. He yelled at me, just as I'd feared. "You dare get rid of my child?" I took a moment to process that, then asked him, "You're not suspicious? That it isn't yours?" Jackson laughed, exasperated, and kneaded the back of my neck. It sent a tingling, ticklish feeling through me, making me shrink away. "I'm not that stupid. Besides, I've already marked you. Who would dare touch you?" I touched the back of my neck. There was a slightly raised bite mark. So that's how powerful a prime alpha's mark was. My dad had marked my mom too. That mark, besides controlling her, had no positive effect. It was like an invisible cage that had trapped her for half her life. I was afraid of becoming my mother. I mumbled to Jackson, "Will this mark be with me for the rest of my life?" The smile vanished from Jackson's eyes. He smirked, looking down at me. "What do you think?" He pressed his thumb into my gland, hard. The gland is sensitive, it can't be stimulated like that. My whole body went weak, and I collapsed into his arms. "Unless you get this carved out, you'll be my omega for life." I pulled his hand away, covering my gland and shaking my head. "That hurts, don't carve it out." Jackson snorted. "Good. As long as you know it hurts." He took me to a very formal-looking building and even had our picture taken. It was like the mugshots they take of criminals on TV. My dad must have owed so much money that he was scared I'd run. He needed something to hold over me. After the pictures, the first thing Jackson did when we got home was make me take some pills. "Here, take your medicine." I didn't know what kind of medicine it was. After Jackson found me at the clinic, he had me go through a bunch of tests. My head was spinning. He talked to the doctor for a long time and came back with a pile of pills. I asked him, "What are these? Can I not take them? I'm perfectly healthy. I don't need medicine." Jackson stared at me for a long time, then looked down, counted out the pills, and pushed them into my mouth. He said in a low voice, "You're too thin. These are all nutritional supplements." But none of the supplements had labels. I put my hand on my stomach and asked quietly, "Is it good for the baby?" Jackson paused for a second, then nodded. "Of course." "Oh, I see. Well, I guess I'll take them then." Even though I was taking all my pills, Jackson wouldn't touch me anymore. He let me have the master bedroom and slept in the guest room himself. I was hurt, but I didn't dare ask him why. I was just collateral for a debt. I shouldn't have been fantasizing that having his kid would improve my status. I could only hug the clothes he'd worn that day to sleep at night. When Jackson saw this in the morning, he just gave me a meaningful smile. Then he started changing 3 times a day and throwing the clothes to me. "When are you going to start nesting? If you're going to nest, is this enough clothes?" I had never nested since I'd been with him, because he was always there during my heats. But this time he wasn't. After I got pregnant, he wouldn't let me go to work with him. He told me to rest at home. One day, I overheard one of his guys guarding me say, Is the boss off dealing with his fiancée's drama? I think so. I heard his family set him up with some young Omega. In that instant, my heat hit me like a ton of bricks. The guys freaked out and immediately called Jackson. Then they ran off to buy suppressants. They never expected me to run out. I wanted to find Jackson, but my brain was a total fog. I wandered aimlessly through the streets, completely lost. I ran into a lot of alphas. They surrounded me. It was so loud, and they smelled so bad. My whole body ached. Someone slapped me a few times, yelling, "You're only with Jackson for his money. Aren't you? Aren't you pathetic? How much did you get? That should have been mine. Spit it out." I covered my head, shaking it over and over. I wanted to say I didn't take any money, but in the next second I blacked out. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Jackson standing in front of me with a beautiful Omega. His face was as dark as ink. He asked me what happened. The alphas around me were gone, as if the whole thing had been a bad dream. But my face was swollen and throbbing, and my right ear was ringing. I couldn't hear a thing. Probably just temporary deafness. I ignored it. I looked at the Omega, pointed at him, and said, "Your fiancé said I took your money and told me to give it back." I said I didn't, so he hit me. I sounded like a tattling child, trying to get Jackson to kick his fiancé out. Jackson and his fiancé exchanged a heavy look. Finally, Jackson rubbed his temples and said to him, "You should go. I'll be in touch." Then he turned to me and demanded, "I told you not to run around. Why don't you ever listen?" I flinched, my heart tightening. I finally had to admit that I was just a toy Jackson kept around for when he was bored. Someone who had to be hidden away. I stayed silent, and Jackson didn't say anything either. He took me home and tilted my chin up to apply medicine. His eyes were blazing with a powerful anger. Finally, he slammed the medicine jar on the floor. He went out and yelled at his guys. Then he came back in to yell at me. "Say something. Are you mute now? Do you have any idea you're running a fever? You couldn't call me? You just had to run all over the place." While scolding me, he pulled off my pants. He held up the soaked fabric for me to see. "Do you have any idea what would have happened if I'd gotten there any later?" I hugged my knees and refused to look at him. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, a sob and tears would come out at the same time. But I'm a man. I can't be this pathetic. When Jackson was done yelling, he frowned and made me kneel on the bed. Slowly, heavily, he helped me through my heat. When it was over, he bit the back of my neck again. A powerful wave of his pheromones flooded my gland. It was agonizingly good. It forced the tears from my eyes. After that, Jackson was even more strict about not letting me leave the house. He often brought his fiancée home with him. They would watch me, observing everything I did and said. Then they would whisper to each other. I started to hate Jackson a little, but I had no right to hate him. I was nobody to him. I grew more and more silent, often just staring into space. Jackson started giving me more pills. I didn't ask what they were, I just took them obediently. For months later, I went into premature labor. I gave birth to a little boy who was far too quiet. He was tiny like a kitten. From the moment he was born, he was in an incubator. I couldn't help but feel I had failed him, bringing him into the world as an illegitimate child. How would he survive? Would he end up like me, living a life with no freedom or happiness? But I was thinking too far ahead. I was barely out of my confinement period when Jackson's fiancée came to put me in my place. He hated that Jackson had marked me. He stabbed my scent gland with a steak fork. I didn't dare tell Jackson, afraid I wouldn't be the one he chose. I hid the wound for days. Jackson was busy with work, busy visiting the baby at the hospital. He didn't notice. By the time he found out, my wound was infected and necrotic. He exploded, punching the wall. His knuckles bled, staining the wall red. He didn't seem to feel it. He silently took me to the hospital and had my scent gland removed. He didn't believe me. He didn't believe it was his fiancée who had intentionally hurt me, so the gland would have to be removed. That way, the mark would be broken. He said I was crazy. I still didn't make a scene. I didn't know how. I just quietly buried my left ear in the sheets. Jackson didn't know that my right ear couldn't hear what he was saying anymore. So stupid. It hurt so much. While Jackson was talking to the doctor, I went to see my baby. Jackson had named him Derek. He looked frail and his eyes were just like mine, empty of light. Why did he have to choose me as his parent? He deserved a better one. I took one last look, then turned and walked away. I walked through old streets, down narrow alleys, through crowded places. I walked for a long, long time. From City B, the place I was born, the place that had Jackson, to City A, a place far away where no one knew me. I found a random old street and put down roots. I lived carelessly, letting myself go. I didn't cut my hair or shave my beard. I don't know how much time passed. A new neighbor asked my name, and I couldn't remember it for the life of me. He saw that I was deaf and looked old, so he just started calling me Deefy. I couldn't be bothered to correct him. I didn't remember how old I was anyway. I was always trying to borrow money from him. Ethan, right? Lend me some cash. For what? Booze. Nope. Stingy. He was new here just like me, a recessive alpha. But now that I didn't have a scent gland or pheromones, alpha pheromones couldn't control me. I wasn't afraid of him at all. He had a baby on the way, and he'd pat his belly and say, "Yeah, I'm stingy. I have to save up to raise my kid. You too, Deefy. Can't you drink a little less?" I didn't listen. I collected plastic bottles and did odd jobs to buy alcohol. When I was drunk, I always felt especially good. I had no idea why. It felt like I'd forgotten something important. Seeing Ethan's belly, I vaguely remembered. I think I had a baby once, too. Who did I have it with? Where is the baby now? I didn't know. And for some reason, I was terrified to find out. Ethan was a good guy. He always let me come over for dinner. He had a daughter and she was adorable. I worked hard to earn money to buy her pretty little dresses, tasty snacks, and fun toys. She really liked me. It made me so happy. It gave me a reason to live. In the blink of an eye, Hannah was already in preschool. Not long after school started, Ethan's rut suddenly hit. He asked me to pick up Hannah from school for him. I hesitated for a moment, then anxiously washed my hair, took a shower, and shaved off my messy beard. I even borrowed one of Ethan's suits. It was a little big, but the man in the mirror looked presentable. I probably wouldn't embarrass Hannah. Hannah went to a fancy private kindergarten in the economic development zone outside the old street. When I picked her up, she was stunned. When she heard me tell the teacher that I was Deefy, sent by her dad, her eyes lit up and she threw herself into my arms. "You're not a grandpa. You're so handsome. I like you." I was taken aback for a second, then smiled and picked her up, heading for the door. One of her classmates grabbed the corner of my jacket. He didn't say anything, just wouldn't let me leave. His two dark eyes were fixed on me. When his father hurried over, he stared at me in a daze too. His eyes suddenly turned red. I smiled awkwardly. "Sir, aren't you taking your son home?" He shuddered, muttering to himself, "Sir? Yes, sir. I'm in a hurry to get home. Could you please get your son to let go?" He covered his face with his hands and rubbed it hard. But not only did he not tell his son to let go, he let him keep clinging to me. "This kid has autism. He rarely takes a liking to anyone. Could you maybe play with him for a little while? I can pay you." I glanced at the child and, for some reason, didn't want to take his money. I just nodded. "All right then. I've always liked kids. I can't stand to see them upset." I walked home holding both Hannah's and the little boy's hands. The man wanted to follow me home, but I told him I'd bring the boy to school tomorrow, hinting that he could go home. He didn't get it and followed closely behind me. He asked me if Hannah was my biological daughter. When he learned she was my neighbor's kid, his expression relaxed quite a bit. We chatted off and on. Standing at Ethan's door, I felt a little desperate. How was I going to explain that I'd brought a whole crew back for a free meal? Turned out the man knew Ethan. They started talking as soon as they saw each other. I took the kids out for a walk by myself. There was a man on the old street making candy figures. Hannah wanted one in the shape of a leaf. I asked the little boy what shape he wanted. He looked up at me quietly, then said, slowly but quickly, "Derek wants a fishy, Papa." So his name was Derek. So cute. "I'm not your papa. Okay, Papa. Whatever." He's just a kid, he doesn't know any better. He's just calling me that. No need to correct him. I handed the finished candy figure to Derek. He gave me a stiff little smile. Very polite. Derek, thanks, Papa. It was kind of heartbreaking. I squatted down and patted his head. I asked him, where's your papa? Derek's big eyes were full of confusion. You are my papa, Papa. What kind of parenting is this? I was getting a little angry. I really hate parents who don't treat their kids right. I'd yelled at Ethan when he first sent Hannah to that fancy preschool. I thought he was using her as a tool, making her get close to rich kids from a young age. Who was that man from before? Derek slowly licked his candy figure. He thought for a moment before answering. That's Daddy, Papa. This kid. It seems like he uses Papa like a comma. Maybe he talks to everyone like this. I breathed a sigh of relief. So, is your daddy nice to you? He looked blank for a moment, then nodded lightly. Daddy is very good to me, Papa. He raised me by himself until I was 4, Papa. Even when I make him cry, he never forgets to make my bottle, Papa. By himself? That man was tall, handsome, and imposing. His pheromones smelled incredible. There's no way he's single. But that's none of my business. I just wanted to know if the kid was doing okay. That's good. Derek, you need to grow up happy. Okay? I stood up, holding a little hand in each of mine. We slowly wandered from one end of the street to the other. I was just about to head back. I turned around and saw the man standing far away, watching me. The expression on his face was strange, like he was laughing and crying at the same time. I walked over, confused, and asked him, "Are you guys done talking?" He nodded. He squatted down, touched Derek's face, and then looked up at me. He said, "This kid's name is Derek. My name is Jackson. Why are you telling me this? It's not like we'll see each other again." I let go of Derek and took a step back. You can take him home now. I hadn't had dinner yet, and I was hungry. Hannah's stomach was growling too. I was going to make Ethan bleed his wallet dry and treat me to a good meal. I'm thinking spicy stir-fried beef. Spicy and fragrant. I took Hannah's hand and was about to leave. A sudden scream startled me. Daddy's bad. Derek doesn't want Papa to go. Papa, don't go, Papa. I turned around to see Derek had thrown his candy figure at Jackson. His face was red with frustration. He was stomping his feet uncontrollably, hitting Jackson's legs. Tears welled up in his grape-like eyes. A stark contrast to the quiet, well-behaved boy from before. The melting candy left an unseemly stain on the tailored suit. Jackson gave a bitter smile. He picked up the struggling Derek. He expertly patted his back, comforting him. Daddy's not leaving, and I'm not taking you away. Be good? Or what if Papa doesn't like you anymore? Derek instantly fell silent. His wet eyes looked at me cautiously. Derek doesn't want to be disliked, Papa. He was too pitiful. I couldn't help myself. I gently wiped his tears away. I don't dislike you, Derek. Jackson looked at me. Ethan's busy right now. Want to get some dinner together? He paused, then added, my treat. Thank you for being willing to play with Derek. I looked him up and down. He must be rich. Does that mean I can order extra meat? So, I went for it. I want spicy stir-fried beef, braised pork belly, chicken and mushroom stew, sweet and sour ribs, tomato beef brisket, and fish head tofu soup. Oh, and I want a drink too. After I said it, I felt a little sheepish, rubbing the back of my neck and glancing at him. Is that too much? Jackson stared at me for a long time. He chuckled. Not at all. Are these your favorite foods? He muttered to himself. It's the first I'm hearing of it. He led me away from the old street. I do like them, but they're not my only favorites. I like all kinds of delicious food. It's just that I rarely eat big meals. I'm lazy, so I don't earn enough to eat and drink like that. The next day, Ethan's rut symptoms were completely gone. A guy named Chase appeared out of nowhere and went with him to take Hannah to preschool. Jackson had stayed the night on the old street and was also supposed to take Derek to preschool. But Derek refused to go. He was crying and fussing, demanding to see me. He wanted me to take him. I asked Jackson, where's the kid's mother or his other parent? Jackson was silent for a moment, then lowered his head. It was a papa. He left us. I looked for him for a long time. A heavy cloud of depression hung over him. It was impossible to ignore. Curiously, I asked him, "Did you find him?" He looked up, his expression unreadable as he gazed at me. "I found him. I was happy for them." "Then you two should make up quickly. The kid misses his papa so much. You should both take him to and from school together." "I can't keep taking him for you. I have to work to earn my beer money." I took Derek's other hand and started walking towards the kindergarten. "I'll just take him this one time." Jackson held Derek's right hand, and in his left, he clutched a string of prayer beads. He kept turning them. After a long while, he asked me softly, "Can I hire you to take him to and from school? $15,000 a month. I haven't made that much money in the past 3 years. He's so rich and so generous, but he sounds like a scammer." I stared at him suspiciously. "Are you a con artist?" To prove he wasn't a scammer, Jackson told me to take out my phone. He wanted to transfer the money, but he scrolled through it, then handed it back to me. "Your Venmo and Cash App aren't linked to a real identity." "Of course not. I don't even know who I am. I don't have an ID. Ethan gave me this phone. The number and the apps are in his name. I rarely use it, but for important things like yesterday you can't be without one. I don't have an ID, and I don't know who I am. My jobs all pay in cash. You can give me cash too." Jackson tensed up, his voice low and hoarse. He said okay. After dropping the kid off at kindergarten, he took me to a bank teller. He withdrew $10,000 in cash on the spot and handed it to me. I'd never seen so much money before. I was both thrilled and terrified. I confirmed again and again, "I just have to take Derek to and from school, right?" Jackson nodded. "And if necessary, I hope you can also play with him in your free time." Piece of cake. You're not going to regret this. No, I'm more afraid you'll regret it. With this much money, only a fool would regret it. Jackson must be a fool. What kind of boss hires a nanny like this? Jackson bought a rundown little apartment on the old street, right next to mine. I got my rundown apartment by trading a piece of priceless white jade for it. When I first arrived on the old street, I was wearing a white jade pendant around my neck. A middle-aged man offered to trade his house for the pendant. I agreed. I didn't know where the pendant came from. I just knew I was dirt poor, so my jade couldn't possibly be real. I made out like a bandit. So when Jackson asked me how I bought the house, I told him the truth. Jackson's face turned from green to red, like a chameleon. He turned his head away, clutching his chest and muttering to himself, "Forget it. Forget it. You found him yourself, you found him yourself. He's alive, that's what matters. He's alive." What was he mumbling about? I slammed my glass down and told him to pour me a drink. "You know me, don't you? Do you know my name?" Jackson froze for a few seconds. He poured me a drink. "I do. Your name is George. Your birthday is October 10th. You're 26 years old. That's so weird. How does he know me better than I know myself? Don't tell me I'm the person you've been looking for." Jackson paused, then lowered his head, his shoulders shaking slightly. He was laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Jackson said with a smile, "I'm laughing because you got smarter." "What's that supposed to mean? Am I really Derek's papa?" Jackson nodded. "But I didn't get it." "Then why did I leave you?" Jackson froze. He filled his own glass and downed it in one go. He seemed just as confused. "I don't know either. Probably because I didn't watch over you properly. Was I a prisoner? Did I need you to watch me?" Jackson shook his head and didn't say any more. He seemed to have nothing better to do than hang around me all day. After a week of hanging around, Jackson was caught by Chase. "If you don't go back to the fucking office, I'm done. It's not my company to begin with." Jackson had no choice but to leave Derek with me. "I'm going back to the office for a bit. You two stay put, don't run around. Don't run around." Hearing those words, my right ear suddenly started ringing. But my right ear was supposed to be deaf. After Jackson left, I covered my ear and waited for it to pass. When I came to, Derek was looking up at me. "What's wrong, Papa? Does your ear hurt, Papa?" He pulled me towards the main street. He was so small but surprisingly strong. Daddy says if you're sick you have to say so, go to the hospital for a checkup, and listen to the doctor and take your medicine, Papa. I'll take you to the hospital, Papa. Jackson has raised Derek well. Even though he has autism and sometimes mechanically repeats words and actions, and occasionally has sudden tantrums, he's mostly very well behaved and polite. Ever since I found out I might really be his papa, I feel this inexplicable sense of guilt whenever I look at him. I'm the one who left him. This thought circles in my head. So whatever he wants to do, I usually go along with it. But I resist going to the hospital. I picked Derek up, Papa's not sick. Let's go shopping, okay? Papa has lots of money now. I can buy Derek lots of cool new clothes. Derek nodded, pursing his lips. A tiny smile appeared. He doesn't smile easily. But he's learning. He said, Daddy never smiles, so Derek can't learn, Papa. But Papa always smiles, it's nice, Derek likes to learn that, Papa. Why doesn't your daddy ever smile? Derek thought for a moment. Daddy likes to cry. Daddy always looks at Papa's picture, and his face gets all wet. Daddy is shy, Papa. I could picture it perfectly. The scene was actually pretty funny. I chuckled to myself as I led Derek into the mall. The next second, someone grabbed my shoulder. George? It's George, right? I turned around. A thin, middle-aged woman was staring at me in shock. I didn't know her, but she had a lot of questions for me. Her cloudy eyes scanned both me and Derek. She said in disbelief, You got married and had a kid? With who? She started grabbing at Derek's clothes, rubbing the fabric. Then she looked at the logo. This kid's clothes are all designer brands. Where did you get the money for this? Did you marry into a rich family? Where's your father? Is he living the good life with you? Her tone grew increasingly bitter. She didn't even care that the little girl behind her was crying for her mom in fear. I pulled her hand away and hid Derek behind me. I said calmly, I'm sorry, you have the wrong person. The middle-aged woman suddenly went berserk. I have the wrong person. I gave birth to you on October 10th, 1999. Your father was a drunk idiot. He named you George because he thought it was simple. Now that you've made it big, you don't want to acknowledge your own mother, is that it? You're just like that heartless father of yours, an ungrateful brat. With every word she spoke, my mind grew more chaotic. In the end, she was crying and pounding on my shoulder. George, have some pity on your mother. She pulled the little girl in front of me, sobbing. Mom's never had a good day in her life. I don't blame you, but your sister is still so young. Please, have pity on us. Give your mom some money so your sister can have a better life. Please? I clutched my ringing right ear, numbly looking at the terrified, tear-streaked little girl. I don't have any money. The woman wouldn't let up. I don't believe you. You're my son. Now that you're successful, you're supposed to provide for your parents. A share of your money should be mine. If you don't give it to me, I'll sue you. Those words sounded so familiar, but I couldn't remember where I'd heard them. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to run, but my feet felt nailed to the floor. I couldn't move an inch. Derek got angry. His small hands kept hitting the middle-aged woman. Let go of my papa, you bad woman. Daddy told me to protect Papa. Derek will protect Papa. Don't be scared, Papa. Daddy is very powerful. When Daddy gets here, he'll get revenge for Papa. The woman let go, as if a light bulb went off. I get it now. You don't have money, the alpha you're with has money. It's good to be a prime omega. You can hook a rich alpha. If it wasn't for me, where would you have gotten the chance to latch onto a rich guy? Shouldn't you be thanking me? Her mouth kept opening and closing. Gradually, I couldn't hear what she was saying anymore. I squatted on the ground, my mind a white fog. I didn't know what I should say, what I should do. It was so painful. My chest felt like it was stuffed with wet cotton. Couldn't breathe. I think I was sick. I clung to Derek for dear life, like he was the last straw I could grasp. When Jackson rushed over, I thought I saw someone else with him. A sharp pain shot through my heart. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them again. He was alone. So weird. Am I hallucinating? Or maybe I'm drunk. Jackson strode towards me, but I couldn't stop myself from backing away. Squatting made it hard to move back. I fell and landed on my butt. Jackson's outstretched hands trembled, stopping abruptly, his expression awful. He turned and harshly told the middle-aged woman to leave. With his back to me, he asked, "George, are you afraid of me?" I nodded, then shook my head. "I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of facing him in a situation like this. I always feel like something bad is about to happen." I didn't know what I was saying. I muttered, "You don't believe me. You believe your fiancé. I'm nothing." Jackson spun around, crouched down, and gripped my shoulders. His grip was tight. I frowned and pushed his hands away. "Stay away from me. It hurts all over whenever you touch me." Jackson stared at his own hands, his eyes filling with bloodshot veins. The heavy scent of lime gin suddenly filled the air. His expression was suppressed, his voice strained. "I thought I wasn't good enough, that's why you wanted to run. But George, you ran for 3 years, and you're still a mess. Tell me, why the hell should I stay away from you?" He was like a balloon pricked by a needle, suddenly bursting. He clenched his fist and slammed it on the floor tiles. "What fiancé? To hell with the fiancé. I've told you 100 times. That was all in your head, from start to finish. You were the only Omega I've ever had. You don't listen, you pretend not to listen, hiding in your own world, looking so damn pathetic. Being wrongly accused didn't matter, as long as you could get better, as long as you took your medicine, anything was fine. What more do you want from me? Why did you have to leave me? Why, after you left me, is your life still so miserable? You have a breakdown when you see your dad, a breakdown when you see your mom, you have a damn breakdown when you see a total stranger. You can have a breakdown anytime, anywhere. But what about me? I don't dare have a breakdown. I don't even dare to question you, to let you remember anything from the past. Why do I have to do this? You're the one who owes me, not the other way around." He was sobbing miserably. His tears dripped onto the floor, mixing with the blood from his bruised hand, spreading into a stain. It threw me into chaos. A child's cry suddenly pierced the suffocating air. I shivered. I turned to look at Derek. He was terrified, his little face flushed red. His words came out like a machine gun. "Don't fight with Papa, Daddy. I don't want Papa to leave me, Daddy. You promised me you'd take good care of Papa. Why are you yelling at him, Daddy? Didn't you say Papa was sick? You're supposed to be nice to sick people just like you're nice to me when I'm sick, Daddy. I ended up at the hospital after all. Jackson dragged me there. He'd probably had enough of me. He got me an appointment with a psychiatrist. They ran a bunch of tests and had me fill out questionnaires. When I came out, Jackson was gone. Ethan and Chase were waiting for me with Hannah and Derek. Ethan looked at me calmly, holding a stack of test results and prescriptions. He said softly, "Jackson said he's going home to cool off for a few days. He asked me to tell you he's sorry and to make sure you get some rest. Derek is staying with you. George, let's go home." Chase hadn't said a word. He looked me over, his gaze not exactly friendly. It looked like he was bursting to say something. But after a sharp look from Ethan, he shut up. He muttered, "Omegas are so high maintenance. My brother's had it rough these past few years, you know, working, raising a kid, and looking for someone all at once." Ethan slapped him impatiently. "Why don't you guys take a look at why everyone in the Chi family's partners keep running away?" Chase went silent. He turned the steering wheel and headed back to the old street. Derek was curled up in my lap, holding me tight. His little head was nodding off. I patted his head. "Go to sleep. Papa won't leave Derek? Papa, I won't leave. I won't." He fell asleep as soon as I said it. I asked Ethan to give me the test results. I read through them on the way. Some conclusions were from the doctor's questions to me. Others were from the doctor's private conversations with Jackson. The diagnosis section read, schizophrenia, manifesting as disorganized thinking, abnormal behavior and thoughts, history of auditory and visual hallucinations, as well as paranoid delusions of persecution. I clutched the test results tightly. So I really am sick, I thought. I raised my hand and touched the back of my neck. There was a round scar there. If the persecution was just a delusion, then why was my scent gland injured? I couldn't remember for the life of me. The more I tried to think, the more my head hurt. I decided to stop thinking about it. Jackson definitely knows anyway. Jackson didn't show up for a whole week. When he reappeared, he was holding divorce papers. He looked down and said he wanted to divorce me. I was stunned. We were married? Jackson froze, then gave a self-deprecating smile. You hate me that much? Huh? Forgetting me is one thing, but you don't even remember we were married. I won't bother you anymore, so you won't always be in pain. Derek likes you, and you like him, so let him stay with you. I'll give you half of my assets. You don't have to worry about supporting him. I listened to him, stunned. What about you? Jackson froze again, forcing a pained smile. Me? I'm finally free, aren't I? No more searching the world for my husband. No more raising a kid by myself. I couldn't be more relieved. Liar. Then why was he hiding and crying? His eyes were all swollen. Can we not get divorced? I'll get treatment. I proposed seriously. I haven't recovered my memory yet. Divorcing like this isn't fair to me. Help me get my memory back. Then we can talk about divorce. Jackson took a deep breath and leaned against the door of my rundown apartment. He covered his eyes with one hand. He was silent for a long time. I thought he was going to refuse, that he was fed up with me. But in the end, he said, I really am in your debt. He took me to see someone. It was a young man. He had the unique, clean scent of an omega. The moment I saw him, I felt extremely agitated. He seemed to know it, too. He quickly held up his hands, showing off a simple, classic ring. I'm already married. My relationship with Jackson is purely professional. Even though Jackson said he's explained it a million times, I feel it's necessary to explain it again. His name was Dr. Evans. He was a psychotherapist. He was an expert in hypnosis. And he was Jackson's old classmate. Jackson had originally contacted him to hypnotize me, to help me forget the trauma from my family. But our first meeting was not very pleasant. The word fiancé triggered my heat during my pregnancy. I ran off to find Jackson, but I actually ended up back at my old home and ran into my dad. He was drunk again. When he saw me, he asked if I had any money. I said no, so he started hitting and yelling at me. He was the one who deafened my ear. But after seeing Dr. Evans, my brain short-circuited, and I only remembered him hitting me. Jackson said, what could I do? I had to send him away first. I asked you why you were running around, but you wouldn't talk. You never talk. I didn't know what to do, so I could only keep you at home. I had Dr. Evans come to the house to observe you. He's one of the top hypnotists in the world. But after a few attempts at hypnosis, you wouldn't cooperate at all. Your defenses were too high. I had no choice, so I let him go. I believed his story. I let Dr. Evans try to hypnotize me again. This time, I let down my guard and hostility. And so, I remembered certain things. When I woke up, Jackson was watching me nervously. I was still groggy, but not so confused anymore. Jackson, as if he'd been waiting a lifetime for the answer, asked me, so, can you tell me why you went back there to find me? I bit my lip, lowered my head, and hesitated for a moment. I thought that maybe my tendency to bottle everything up was what led to this situation. So I told him, because that's where I first met you. Jackson fell silent. After a long time, he covered his face with his hands. He sighed, you're so frustrating. You really are. Infuriating and lovable. He paused, then added, the most lovable. The hypnosis couldn't cure me all at once. Dr. Evans set up a course of treatment for me. Once a week. 1 hour per session. Couldn't be too long or it would destabilize my mental state. During the 4th session, I finally remembered how my scent gland got injured. It was me. It was an act of self-harm. In my subconscious, I saw Jackson as my possession, but consciously, I felt unworthy because I was just collateral. I believed that when Jackson said he loved me, he didn't love me, but my pheromones as a prime omega. I hated that Jackson wasn't faithful. I hated that I was controlled by my pheromones, addicted to his, and I hated Dr. Evans for stealing Jackson away. Of course, this was all in my head, so I destroyed my own scent gland and framed Dr. Evans. In reality, Dr. Evans hadn't been around for a long time, but I kept seeing him, because my brain was sick. Ever since I accepted that I was sick, everything became much clearer. My chaotic memories started to untangle and fall into place. I started to feel guilty. So dramatic. Looking back at my old memories from an outsider's perspective, I just felt so incredibly dramatic. The priceless white jade pendant was a betrothal gift from Jackson on the day we registered our marriage. It was worth millions, and I casually traded it for a rundown apartment. When I was with Jackson, the food was always lavish and delicious, but I had no appetite and rarely ate. When Jackson asked me what I liked to eat, I'd say anything is fine. There were countless incidents like this. I was too ashamed to face Jackson and Dr. Evans. I hid at home for days and wouldn't come out. Derek called for me, but I still wouldn't open the door. Jackson pried my door open. You need to change this bad habit of hiding whenever something goes wrong. Derek buried his face in my chest, crying pitifully. Don't ignore me, Papa. Looking at him, guilt washed over me like a tsunami, drowning me. Taking psychiatric medication during pregnancy carries a risk of affecting the fetus. The doctors had warned Jackson, but Jackson didn't care. I can raise him for the rest of his life even if he's born with problems. Curing George is the top priority. Derek was born prematurely and was unervingly quiet from birth. After he started talking, he was diagnosed with mild autism. As he got older, his tantrums were just as extreme. Jackson didn't trust anyone else to take care of him and put a lot of effort into raising him. The more I learned, the more my heart ached, and the more I blamed myself. But I couldn't afford to get lost in self-pity anymore. I asked Jackson where my dad was. Jackson took me to a psychiatric hospital. He's alive and kicking in there, gambling with the other patients and the nurses. I saw my dad manically playing rock, paper, scissors with a nurse. If he won, he would obediently take his medicine. If he lost, he would have a meltdown and threaten to kill the nurse. With other patients, the nurses would let them win so they'd take their meds. But the nurse in charge of my dad deliberately kept winning. So my dad kept having meltdowns, screaming and shouting. But he couldn't get out of the small, barred window of his room. You're doing? Jackson nodded. I also arranged for him to have electroshock therapy. Want to watch? Might make you feel better. I shook my head, cracking my knuckles. Just open the door to his room. I'll beat him up myself. Before, I was always terrified of my dad's pheromones. Sour, foul, and accompanied by beatings and curses that were paralyzing. I can still smell his unique scent of decay now. But I no longer have a scent gland, no longer have an omega's innate submission to an alpha. Just the sense of smell. No more fear. Why shouldn't I get my revenge? Jackson smiled, had someone open the door, and went in with me. Later, I never went to look for my mom. She gave birth to me and raised me, but she was also a victim of a patriarchal, alpha-dominated household. I could ignore her, but I couldn't bring myself to blame her. After I had fully recovered, I saw the divorce papers on the nightstand. I took them out and placed them in front of Jackson. I asked politely, "Do you still want to get divorced? I respect your choice." Jackson's face changed in a second. He snatched the papers and tore them in half. Burn the bridge after you've crossed it? In your dreams. I pursed my lips and started to smile. Then I started laughing out loud. Jackson stared at me, stunned, his lips pressed together, his eyes red. He accused me, "I was with you for 4 years, and you never once smiled at me like that." After my mom abandoned me, I forgot how to smile. I explained, "It's okay. It's not too late now." Jackson gently rubbed the scar on the back of my neck and tucked a white hair from my temple behind my ear. "You should dye your hair back to black. It's hard to look at." "Okay, I'll dye it for you." Later, I moved into Jackson's house. We took a family photo with Derek. My neighbor was still Ethan. Epilogue. I picked up this pathetic little stray. Smelled incredible. He was supposed to pay off a debt. But he was more high maintenance than me. He was always frowning in his sleep, whimpering. He would only sleep soundly if I held him. He was sick in the head, always paranoid. I thought it was because of his family, that he'd get over it after a while. And he did get better. I just didn't realize he was hiding it. After he got pregnant, all the symptoms came roaring back. And they got worse and worse. I never wanted a kid in the first place, But George was talking about getting rid of it while his hands never left his stomach. So I had to be the bad guy again. Whatever, I'm the one who picked him up. What else could I do? Just had to spoil him rotten. The doctor said taking psych meds during pregnancy could cause miscarriage or developmental problems. I didn't care. I just wanted George to be okay. Even our own child had to take a back seat for him. We had a kid, so it was time to get married. I took George to the courthouse that same day. Took the picture, signed the papers, got the license. George was really down, like he really didn't want to marry me. Pissed me off so bad. But I got angry too soon. There was always something new to be angry about, and I couldn't even get mad at him. When the hell have I ever had to put up with this kind of crap? He heard from God knows where that I had a fiancé, and then he started calling everyone he saw my fiancé, especially Dr. Evans. I explained 100 times that he was there to treat him. He'd just stuff his ears into a pillow and pretend to be deaf. It drove me crazy. He finally gives birth, and then he starts mutilating himself, stabbing his own scent gland until it's ruined. Doesn't say a word about it. Almost died. I thought he hated me so much that he was disgusted by my mark. It drove me crazy. I swallowed my anger, took him to the hospital, and had the necrotic gland removed. And in the time it took me to fill out some admissions paperwork, he abandoned me and our child. Just ran off. It made me so mad I thought I was going to lose my mind. I was raising a baby and looking for my husband at the same time. I looked for 3 years, and there he was on some rundown old street cosplaying as a grandpa. And the only reason he cleaned himself up was to pick up someone else's kid. It made me so mad I wanted to spank him. But I didn't dare. He didn't even remember me. What if he ran away again? He can't run away again. I can't take it. Angry or not, we're not actually getting divorced. If he had dared to sign those papers, I really would have spanked him. Good thing he didn't sign. He spared himself a beating. It's fine. I won't use my hand. I'll use a stick. He doesn't have pheromones anymore. But he still smells so good. Turns out my husband's right ear really is deaf. It drove me crazy. I'm going to the psychiatric hospital to beat up his dad. Make him deaf. Then go home and comfort my husband. Thank you, Chase. Because you're a scumbag. You found a rebellious alpha for a husband. Thank you, Chase's husband. You ran away with a baby for 3 years and became George's neighbor. Thank you, my son, for knowing to hold on to your papa and not let go. And thank you, me. I'm the most goddamn devoted man in the world.